Welcome to the Start the Snowball podcast, where we help you start an online business or get your side project off the ground. This is episode 5, and today we're going to talk about how to build your side hustle as a game and why this is crucial to being more successful faster and having more fun, finding more purpose. My name is Brad, and I'm on with my partner, Corey Miller. Pretty excited to talk about this, Corey.
I know, I can't wait to geek out because we got to do some nostalgic, like reflecting about this topic today, and also examining our past and some things that led into this topic. And so I'm excited to geek out with you on the subject of games and turning it into your business, your side hustle into a game.
Yeah, I think I don't think anybody will be surprised that geek out is an appropriate term. We're both fans of games and gaming and also business. And I think you have this concept of the best game ever invented business. There's a really cool article on your blog about this. And I've been a huge fan of games my whole life. And I think that's why business, especially digital business, really clicked for me. I never knew that I wanted to be into business or marketing or anything like that. But as soon as I started finding out about digital business, digital entrepreneurship and marketing, I just got super into it because I think it is very, very game-like. And I think what we're going to talk about today is the more that you can build your business as a game for yourself, the easier everything's going to go, the faster you'll hit those success milestones that you're looking forward to, the more purpose and fun and excitement and joy you're going to have. So it's the perfect strategy for just making your life awesome through business, right? Like you're going to do better in business. You're going to have a more enjoyable life if you build your side hustle, your business as a game. So let's talk about the best game ever invented, a little thing we like to call business.
Yeah, I go back to the days of video games like Atari and then Nintendo and most every version after, Nintendo and stuff. And I've just recently come back to video games with my son who's 8. And it's just so reflective of you get lost in the experience, but there's a score or some sense of how you're making progress and you're accomplishing things. And I think I wrote that article back in like 2013 when a few years into starting my first full-time business, which is iThemes, and going like, this is fun. It changes every day, challenges me. It doesn't necessarily always crush me. Sometimes it probably did, but I got to use and apply my strengths, my experiences, my expertise, and develop new ones to rapidly catch up. And I was like, I would tell people a lot, Brad, that I didn't have hobbies because business was so fun. I get to go play. And I feel like that today, even fast forward, I don't know, 7, 8 years later, I feel like I'm playing the best game ever invented called business. And it plays into something you've been reading about lately. And it's exciting, called game theory and game design. And I love it. So we put this whole topic around it because we want to help you to see your side hustle as a game, because it's going to help you, as you were saying, like make it fun, keep you in it more, but also to kind of talk through the details of being in the zone or in flow, and then help you stay in that environment where, like I was telling you, I walk into this office every day and I feel like I'm in my little gamer seat. I even have a gamer headset, but that was not intentional, because this whole concept of creating the game around you by your rules and seeing what ticks your box. I mean, it's game, the concept of game for business, I think, is the perfect human motivation. It's just, you can see games everywhere, athletic games, board games, card games. We talked about all these different kind of games in our society and life, and it's so applicable. We want to help you apply that to business.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts on that. It's a great metaphor for life, and I think that's why human beings really like games. The resource I've just discovered, which I'm completely fascinated by, is called Game Thinking, and it's a book and a course and kind of a philosophy by the author is Amy Jo Kim, and I've been listening to some of her talks on YouTube and stuff, and she's basically been instrumental in designing some of the biggest games of all time, like The Sims, Ultima Online, Rock Band, which I was a huge fan of. And now she's taken that expertise and she helps startups build product designs that leverage all the things that they've learned designing games for 30 years. And what's beautiful about games is that these motivations are built into our psychology, to our wiring. So when you turn business into a game that you love, well, you don't have to work so hard to motivate yourself and push yourself, because it's inherent. And that's what she teaches. And that's what's so beautiful about what we're going to talk about today, is because you don't have to motivate yourself so hard. Like you said, when you were at your previous business, you just said, this is fun. Like, you don't have to convince yourself, but business doesn't have to be this struggle, this hustle thing that you have to push and grind through. It can be something that is inherently motivating. And one of the most interesting things I've learned about this game design thinking is that the reason that games work and the psychology that they leverage in game design is because we as human beings want to achieve mastery and we want to learn skills. So good games will build that in, and they build in the process of essentially flow, which we're going to talk about in a minute. It's a big piece of this, but that's why it works. Because, if you think about business as a hard thing that you're going to have to do all this uncomfortable stuff, and you probably will, but think about your favorite games. You're willing to learn skills in games. You're willing to grow. You're willing to take on challenges. And you need that to do business. Like, one of the big reasons we're saying you should design your business as a game is because you'll actually stick with it. If you think about, if you've tried businesses in the past and you didn't stick with it, well, it's probably because you didn't turn it into something that was inherently fun and motivating. Maybe it was a chore. Maybe it was misery. Some people have businesses, even businesses that make them a lot of money, and they hate it. They hate doing it. And that's just not a recipe for a kind of life that I want. And also, it's just not worth it. You're not going to be as successful as if you build your business as a game. So the game design, game thinking has been really good for me to realize that this stuff is built in. If you set it up the right way and leverage your strengths, your interests, and build a business the way that works for you, which we're going to tell you some strategies to do that, then you don't have to work so hard to make it happen. And that means you're going to stick with it. That means you're going to accomplish your goals. You're going to grow so much faster.
Exactly. You just looked around in your life, and I'm sure, as we did earlier today, prepping for this episode, and you realize how much integrated into the fabric of our lives this concept of games is. And so I love the way you played it out. So I want you to talk about the games that you like, that you resonate with you, because when we're talking about this, it has to do with helping formulate the kinds of games. You and I talked about, we don't like card games. Card games feels too much like rote to us. And for me, it's like too much chance and luck. And that's not fun. I like to deploy strategy. We both like strategy, but tell us a little bit about the games that you love, the types of games outside of business that you love, and maybe we'll pull some tie-ins to how you approach business too.
Yeah, and this is also one of our tips for today, which is to look for, if you're thinking about how to build your business as a game, look for the games that you already enjoy and that you're really good at. And that's a place where you can start in designing your life and business that way. So for me, I really love and always have loved two kinds of games. One, strategy, really heavy strategy games, and two is role-playing games. Role-playing games, essentially, the part that I like is all about skill acquisition. It's about leveling up and gaining new abilities and skills. And if I can build that into what I'm doing, I am all in. Every day I'm all in. It's so fun to me. And that's been a great gift of working with you, is that you gave me permission to do that. And it's been so awesome, because I love learning. I love leveling up and getting better at skills. And so the two games that I really enjoy are any sort of role playing game. So for example, EverQuest, that was one of the first games I played as a teenager. It was one of the early MMORPG games, multiplayer, whatever. Like um World of Warcraft kind of took over and was way bigger than EverQuest, but I still love EverQuest. Um, but it's all about gaining skills and mastery and getting new abilities and leveling up. That's it. Filling up the experience bar. I loved Pokemon. That was the same thing, you know, filling up the experience bar, leveling up. I just get so addicted to that experience. And then the other game that I really love, I don't really love card games in the traditional sense. I don't really play poker or anything like that. My family loves, there's a game in Michigan. I don't know if you've heard of this called euchre, which is, oh, yeah.
I thought you were going to
So
say cornball. And I'm like, yes, I know cornball. Or cornhole.
No.
Cornhole.
Ask your friends from Michigan about euchre. Everybody from Michigan plays this game called euchre, and I've never played, and I've I don't know. It's you know, it's this Michigan thing that everybody loves to play. So I don't really love those kinds of games because of the things that you mentioned earlier, but I love Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering is like the ultimate game to me. It is massive strategy. And I always used to think it was kind of simple. And then I realized as I tried to teach it to people who don't really love really intense strategy games, they were like, this is the hardest, most complex game ever. And I was like, really? Oh, but to me, oh, it's so fascinating because every single game is different depending on who's playing. You can have two people playing, or you can have, I had games in college where we would have teams. We had 5 different teams of 4 people playing against all of us. So there were like 20 people sitting at this. So the Magic the Gathering is like infinitely complex. And I love that. So those are the two games that get me, is role playing where I'm learning skills and leveling up, and Magic the Gathering, which is all strategy. You really have to think about all these different infinite pieces of strategy, how they all tie in together. And that's really reflective of the type of businesses that I like as well. So we'll talk more about that. So how about you, Corey? What are the games that get you excited?
I love hearing you geek out on that because you can tell it's primed to who you are. You know, it's on your strengths and interests and passions, and it plays very well in business. You know, I wanted to preface to make a comment like, don't play somebody else's game, create your own. You know, I think too often we fall into playing somebody else's game, and when this is why I just love entrepreneurship is I get to create my own game. Now there's commonalities. There's obviously competition. Somebody's playing a game against me that might not be playing the same game. Not all rules are created equal, all that. But to your question, I go back like the first probably game that stuck with me the most is chess. I was the geek at high school that would play with my fellow geeks in the library chess at lunch. And I love the strategy of it. And also then I went to college and I feel like I upgraded chess a little bit to Risk, which could be a terribly long game, but we found Mission Risk, which is much better. Okay, go kill all the green people, go occupy Africa and Australia or something like that. And they all had challenges. And so I love strategy games, one where you're thinking, you're doing cool stuff. You can feel like you're making progress. There's competition for sure. I'm not the biggest like head-to-head competition type person, which chess is, by the way. But Risk is different. It's more like group competition, and who essentially can divide up and conquer the world. So those two really stick out for me. Strategy type games, I love those. I'm not a card game. I don't really find enjoyment. It feels like numbing my mind out to do, you know, even blackjack. I'm like, there's some strategy for sure, but I'm like, come on. Not each his own game. And then the other one that really pairs well with my experience in my past company and the current way I'm doing things too is the athletic sport of volleyball. Love volleyball. Found it when I was in my 20s, actually in college too. Played it, coached it, recruited people to play on my team and won our leagues and stuff like that. Now I'm way out of shape, but I still love the game. It's strategy, but it's collaboration. 6 people on indoor, specifically 6 people on a team having to move fluidly together to cover all the spots. And that's how I love my teams and businesses. There's captains on the floor for sure. There's a setter may not always be the captain. In a lot of indoor volleyball, there's a libero, which is always rotating, more the utility, but doesn't go up and spike and things like that. And I love that game because of if you watch, I think I can't remember when the actual collegiate national championship tournament is. I think it was in the fall. But if you watch those teams that come on ESPN, you see this fluidity. Like they just own it. Everybody knows the role they're in, where they're on in the court, which rotates, by the way. And there's complicated, potentially sometimes strategic moves. It's not all about power. It's all sometimes about trickery, about finesse. And it's really just the objective, get the ball down on the other person's side of the court. And so that particular game, and there's a scoreboard. My business mentor, Smitty, would say, what's the first thing you go when you walk into any kind of game in the middle of the game? What's the first thing you do? You look at the scoreboard. And so every one of these games has some sense of a scoreboard, and levels to the game too, with its own unique challenges and objectives. But they all have pretty much common elements to it. So those 3 games are the ones that really come to mind about why I love those games and what I've created in business, my own game version of that. And it very much looks more like volleyball now than it does chess. Chess was how I started my freelance career, playing 1-to-1. But it was really, the game was pay off student loan debt. I started freelance writing, really stumbled into it, and paid off a bunch of student loans through my freelance writing. Then that developed into freelance web design, which snowballed into the company I created called iThemes in 2008. And so it's just fun thinking of it like this, because I don't have a lot of hobbies, as I've told you. And over the years, I kind of felt guilty for that. Shouldn't I like gardening? No, because I get to play at work for 8 hours-ish a day, 5 days a week. I get to play the best game ever invented for me.
I love that. I had a couple questions I have for you. Is one thing I really like with this is that building your own game means like your own approach to maybe the same goal. A couple of things. One, scoreboards, right? That's a big theme with this whole concept. Is business is a great game because there are so many scoreboards you can look to, whether it's getting users to your website or it's getting revenue, growing revenue. There's so much data. You have to be familiar with and comfortable with numbers to be in business. And so there's always scoreboards. That's one great thing about business as a game, because there's always scoreboards. You can always kind of measure your progress. It makes me think of like the student loan game. You must, like, once you pick that as kind of a scoreboard, you were probably like, well, how do I make more money freelance writing? Well, I'm willing to try this other strategy so that I can go faster or get more progress in my goal of paying off my student loans. For me, one phase of business was focusing on affiliate marketing. And in that game, for some reason, what everybody aims at is daily or monthly revenue. So it's like a lot of people say $100 a day or $200 a day or $3,000 a month, $10,000 a month. So that's kind of the scoreboard. Is like when I was purely focusing on affiliate marketer, I was like, okay, how do I get to that $100 a day with affiliate commissions? Or how do I get to $3,000 a month, $5,000 a month, whatever? So that's a type of scoreboard you can have. Of course, this is going to change based on the stage of business and industry. But another thing I wanted to ask you was finding your own game, your own version of doing the same thing. Were there other writers that you saw using different strategies? And same in business too, right? Like other people would have run iThemes differently, or other people would run the businesses that you're running right now differently, right?
Yes.
Like have you seen the contrast? Have you tried out other people's strategies and been like, I hate this, for example?
When I have tried out other people's strategies or gotten close and been tempted, I've probably failed and been miserable. Those two things stand out because I'm playing somebody else's game. It's like playing cards. It's not the game for me. Now I play cards. I play poker actually with a set of guys in Oklahoma City before the world closed down. But my scoreboard was camaraderie. So I play
Mm,
poker as like the entrance to admission to hang out with a really awesome group of gentlemen. And so but whenever I've done that, I've skewed out. Like for me, business comes down to dollars. I mean, that's the relevance, but I don't think of it as like the game where I would get a skew in that is just trying to hit the highest score in money just because for wealth. Like
mm.
I want wealth, but it's not my game. It's not my only game for sure. It's a byproduct of being in a great game, and for sure, I want my family to be secure and the future to be secure with money and all that kind of stuff. But when I make it the sole object of the point of my game, the motivation of my game, things are askew. I told my wife when we started dating, and she was there for my first $100,000 plus sales month, and it was like, wow, this is cool. So we high fived and everything, and team, high five. We got this top score on the video game we're playing called iThemes. But all that money didn't just flow into my pocket. You know, it was almost a little odd because even though it represented money, it wasn't profit. And I had even some of the profit I wanted to reinvest to build another top score, but it wasn't just for wealth or to put it in my pocket. Although I believe businesses should be really profitable, and if you're doing good in the world, so when my values have gone askew about why I'm playing the game is when it did. And a great example of that real quick is we built e-commerce software in probably 2015, 16. Spent a lot of money on it. It was a miserable failure because I got my values skewed up. I thought, wow, big, huge market. We can make our place in it and make a dent. And it just values kind of got skewed in that. Now I think we did really, really good work, and I love the project because it was cool. It had a purpose to it for sure about how we designed it, but it ultimately just didn't sync with a natural outflowing of who we were. So that was one example, and it cost me a lot of money.
That's such an awesome thing to bring up with this is it matters what you set your scoreboard to. And sometimes you can get it wrong, and it's okay if you try something out, you set the wrong scoreboard and then you figure that out. That's great. That's part of the process of learning and growing. It actually reminds me of in Magic, there's a similar thing of like, if your only goal is to just win, well, there are certain decks you can play that are basically no fun. They're zero fun, but you will win. So because what I optimized for with Magic was fun in a group setting, right? Like I never liked playing one-on-one. It was so boring to me. I like playing with my friends. This was most of the Magic playing I did was in college. So I made the mistake sometimes of building these really good decks that would win on like turn 1 or turn 2. And then I realized I just spent like $200 on this amazing deck, and it's really boring. It's not very fun. It's like it wins, okay, whoop-de-doo, but nobody wants to play against me anymore. Like this isn't fun. It's just like, oh, my friends would be like, okay, yep, you win. And I saw other people do that too. It was part of the natural progression of becoming a better Magic player. Was you would eventually have this light bulb where you'd be like, wait a second, why am I building these crappy decks? Why don't I just spend a lot of money to make this super optimized winning machine deck so that I can win? And you think that's going to be so exciting and all your friends are going to be like so impressed by you. And then you start playing it and you're like, okay, this is kind of boring. It's just like win. It's like flipping a coin now. Now we're back to playing a game that's all chance, right? It's just either like I win on turn 2 or I don't. Like what's fun about Magic is seeing how this deck goes against that person or this deck, and like the intricacies and like this player versus that player. Like, oh, I know my friend Nick, he likes to be a little like tricky. He's got some tricks up his sleeve, but this player over here, I know that he likes to play really straightforward and likes, like, so it's that complexity is fun. Purely optimizing for winning, and in business, if you're purely optimizing for money, you might lose sense of your values. You might lose sense of, you might have people not that interested in playing the game with you anymore, which was actually what you enjoyed. So that's I'm so glad you brought that up. That's a really good conversation.
Yeah, optimize for happiness,
Yeah.
optimize. It's when we optimize for just wealth for wealth's sake or money for money's sake, I think we get our values askew sometimes. So I'm with you on that. Well, do you want to transition into flow? And so the purpose of a game is really, in building your own game, is to get you in flow. And you know how to pronounce Mihaly's name better, but this is the concept of in the zone that we all know it, or being on fire, whatever, is really this concept called flow, pioneered by a psychologist named
Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi.
Yeah. So if you go to Amazon and just type in flow, you'll probably find his book. Incredible book on this concept of flow. You've experienced it if you've ever been doing anything and lost sense of time, maybe skipped meals and didn't realize it. Very honestly, the casinos nail flow for most people because there's not, helping people lose sense of time and all that. And most video games, well-designed popular video games, put the players in flow, the optimum state where you're just getting stuff done, moving, kicking butt kind of thing. And this whole concept of creating your own business, creating your own game as your side hustle is the concept we're trying to get to. Is how do you help people get in flow, in the zone, and on fire?
Yeah, that's if you can build your business to generate flow for yourself, if you can get into flow on a regular basis, then you're just going to have such an awesome time with it. You're going to get a lot done, like more than you could possibly imagine getting done. And you're going to have fun, and you're going to feel fulfillment, and you're going to, actually the actual experience of flow, the biochemical process of flow feels good to us. It's like I heard this as an Einstein quote, like spending hours with the person that you love feels like a minute, and spending a minute with your hand on a hot stove feels like an eternity. Like if you're doing something that gives you flow, it's just time will go by without you noticing it. So Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi studied lots of different people from lots of different fields, like musicians and artists and entrepreneurs, and and then it's been applied to all these different fields. But basically, when you get into that zone where we'll talk about the mechanisms of flow. So basically, this is all to, like, what does it look like to have your business or your side hustle feel like a game on a day-to-day or regular basis? And it's going to look like flow. It's going to look like you're setting things up the right way so that you can enjoy what you're doing and always be, like looking for that goal that's just on the horizon, the next step, the snowball, it goes back to our snowball analogy. It's like, what's the next push of the snowball to keep building it? So one thing is, we can talk about, if you haven't yet transitioned full-time into running a business, if it is a side hustle, side gig, and you still have your day job, which again, we always highly recommend sticking with your day job for as long as you can, as long as it makes sense. What are some of the ways that you can, if you're not like running a business full-time, what are some of the ways that you can start to look for and cultivate flow in your day job?
Yeah. So I think, okay, look around your day job and find the people, or just be aware and observe the things that other people look to you for value. They go, oh, wow, Corey, Brad, when you do this, it's so valuable to us, because it's probably going to be the natural things you do. The things that definitely add value for other people. Is it you bring people together in a team and can lead a group of people, or is it a specific skill set or something? But it's that time where you're like, oh, it's just come natural. It's not as easy as everybody else. You're on fire, and it's these natural strengths and environments, I would say, is the other part. Notice when you lose sense of time, you're getting stuff done, people are giving you accolades potentially, and it's almost effortless. Notice the environment too, what you're doing, and then the environment around it. And all of that, what Mikhail says a lot about flow is that's how you kind of determine it. And it's not just playing video games, by the way.
Yeah.
These are multi-billion-dollar companies that are like really tap into what flow is, and it's not just that. It's a circumstance where you're at. It's the exchange of value. Someone is paying you to do something, you know, and you recognize it's a common thing. And sometimes it's not always the obvious thing either. They really hired me for this, but what they really value is that, you know, it's relationships with customers, how you communicate. Maybe is what they really, really value, but the technical thing they put down in your job is support analyst, or I don't know, whatever that position is. So I think day job is a perfect laboratory for you to start experimenting and observing where the times you get in flow.
You know, did you ever see the movie Pleasantville?
Long time ago.
Okay, well, there was this scene I'm reminded of. So this whole concept of like look around on your day-to-day experience of your day job and look for the pockets of your job where you actually do have that sense of, you know, enjoyment, fulfillment, excitement, the things where you feel like you do get into a zone, and then you can look to start translating some of that over into your side hustle, your business. But the Pleasantville thing, there was this character played by Jeff Daniels who was a manager at the burger joint, at the restaurant, the diner. And, you know, so Pleasantville, like the whole world is black and white. And he said, and everybody does the same exact thing every single day. Go check it out. It's a really interesting movie. But this guy, so his job every single day was to, like, you know, open the door, unlock the door, open the door, like clean out the tables, da 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 da. He does all these things exactly the same. But then he said, but there's this one thing, once a year or once a quarter, I get to choose a different painting that goes up on the wall. And I find so much, and again, I don't exactly remember what it was, but there was something where he got to do this one thing every quarter or every week or every month or whatever, where he got to do something different. And he just found that was his favorite part of his job. You know, so everything else was just like, yeah, whatever, but do the same thing every single day. But there was this one thing he had to do that brought him, that sparked some sort of curiosity, some sort of joy, some sort of, you know, interest. And so that's what you want to look for in your existing job. Like for me, oh, here's a perfect example. So for me, the flow state that I get into is when I'm learning new things, right? And one of the previous side hustles that I've had was being an Uber driver, driving around, specifically delivering food for Uber Eats. And, you know, it's a grind. It's not like a super fun job. But the one part that I loved about being an Uber driver is I could put in audiobooks or podcasts and I could just listen to them all day long. I got to learn so much while I was doing Uber, because I was like just driving around, you know, whatever. The actual job was very tedious, very boring to me. But the fact that I could listen to audiobooks while I was driving around was amazing. It was like one of the best opportunities, you know, so that was me finding my flow state within a day job, right? Most of the day job, just a job. But there was that one piece that was special to me. It's like, oh yeah, what other opportunity, what other job could I have that would have let me listen to audiobooks all day? That's like magic. And that was my flow state. So that's an example I have of looking for your flow within the context of your day job.
And Snowball. So we talked about seasons of time earlier this week, you and I, and seasons of time where, okay, I'm having to do this. It's not the best, but I'm making the most of it, getting in flow, but it's setting the stage for what comes next. And I think all of it's valuable. The classic case I might have mentioned on a previous episode is Steve Jobs back in college took a calligraphy class, and that helped shape the perspective and approach and vision for the first Mac software out there on the planet. And we have so much to owe to that curiosity factor of learning. But he took that and it was able to apply it. And that's something that you want to talk about too, is following your curiosity. And I'll say for my part, it's remembering to always stay open to what comes next, what's out there. We get in silos and we have tunnel vision, and we don't always see what is all out there. So every experience, I believe, can be used in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not in the present moment. You don't want to hear that, but you wanted to talk to, I know, specifically about curiosity too.
Yeah, and I was so excited because I recently read a book by Stephen Kotler, who writes a lot about flow and has done tons of research on flow, runs a business about it. And he just recently wrote this book. What was it called? The Art of Impossible, I think it was called. And it was so cool because he confirmed for me that the number one thing to start yourself going down the path of finding flow is curiosity. Like, for me, if I get curious in something and I start just the next step of maybe watching a YouTube video about it, or reading an article, or reading a book, or talking to somebody about that thing, I can't help but get my brain excited to kind of learn the next thing and pull the next thread and go to the next step. So curiosity, follow your curiosity. If you're curious about something, just, don't put it off. This is a mistake that I've been making for many years. Don't put off your curiosity until some perfect time when you're making enough money, or you have enough free time, or someone gives you permission, right? Like, give yourself permission now to explore that curiosity. And okay, so maybe you might think like, well, I can't do that thing that I'm curious about. Like, for example, one of my brothers, he wants to own brick and mortar businesses someday, like bowling alleys and movie theaters. Well, he doesn't have the resources to do that right now, not by a long stretch, but he could start somewhere, right? Like, he could start, like, Google, like, how much does a bowling alley cost, or like, what's it like to own a bowling alley, and like maybe watch a documentary about it, or maybe, he happens to work for someone who owns a bowling alley, so he could maybe, ask that guy, like I've recommended to him many times, like, hey, talk to your boss, like, see what it's like. Maybe go work there, right? Like, go become a manager at the bowling alley. See if you really like that as a business. Like, I think we talked about this on an earlier podcast, the concept of being in the world of. So that's always going to yield fruit, is following your curiosity, because the more you go into things that you're curious about, you don't need to force yourself to be motivated. You're going to have inherent motivation, and you're going to want to build the skills. You're going to want to learn more. You're going to want to meet the people who do that thing or who know about that thing. So that's my big thing for finding flow. Follow your curiosity.
Let's talk about how to stay in flow. So you found it. So you're staying open, curious about it, looking in your day job. But then you found it and grabbing hold of it, and how you stay in flow. Because our theory here is stay in flow. You're going to be more successful. You're going to stay with it longer. You're going to probably feel good about what you're doing as well when you're in flow, obviously, because that's kind of the euphoria of it all. But how to stay in flow. And we talk about game theory. And the two major concepts for us is the concept of levels. There's a concept within games, in videos, whatever, it's like leveling up. It's either going to the next level or getting the, packs that you need or whatever it is. And then the second is the concept of the scoreboard. So you want to talk about levels in game theory and how we can stay in flow and create that game?
And I think this is a good time to mention a caveat about being in business or doing anything sort of creative and challenging. We should mention that you can't always only do the things that
that you love.
Right? Like, unfortunately, but we're saying, as we continue this discussion, we're saying just keep going more and more in that direction. But sometimes you do have to fill out your taxes. Sometimes you do have to fire somebody. Like, right? Like, I've made that mistake in the past of being like, what? But that isn't my flow, so I don't want to do it. Well, there are components here. Yeah, it's a great caveat that we should address, is not this idealistic, always in flow thing. It's just like, we're talking about getting more and more flow, but you do have to do uncomfortable things sometimes that are not flow, right?
I mean, for example, I do more bookkeeping than I ever did. I do now, where I'm in, invoices and paying and going into actually chasing or my bank and, reimbursements and stuff, which 5 years ago, I've been like, no way, you do this. And then I also run payroll for 2 of the companies I have, for even another entrepreneur, another player in the game, so to speak, because that's kind of my role. Like, I'm there to do that, and that's okay. I don't want to do it forever. I want to spend more of my time in flow, what I could uniquely contribute, but I know right now in this stage, it's okay. So wonderful, Cal. I'm so glad you said that, because it's not all about flow, for sure. But when you can get in, design the game, and the game works, and stay more in your flow, that's fantastic. But part of the course, think you have to do is like stuff you don't want to do. Even me, and I try to eradicate everything I don't like, but it's still just some things I have to do.
Yeah, it's a reality of life, so let's acknowledge that. So when we talk about leveling up, in the flow research from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, Stephen Kotler is another great place to check out for stuff on flow. They talk all the time about having stretch goals, being in your stretch zone, right? So there are some skills, some levels that and this is the same with games too. If you've ever played like role-playing games, you can't just skip ahead to the end of the game, because usually you have to become more skilled. As you level up, you gain new abilities, you gain new experience that allow you to keep taking on harder and harder challenges, right? Like, back to that example of like owning a bowling alley. Well, there's a lot of steps to go from, young person with limited resources and no business experience to I own bowling alleys successfully, right? There's a lot of steps there, and you can't just skip right to the end. So but you always want to be moving forward. So what you should be looking for are areas of development, skill building, where you are being challenged, but it's a stretch zone. So the goal stretches you, it doesn't snap you, right? So it doesn't crush you. It's not too overwhelming. You don't put too much pressure on yourself so that you feel bad when it doesn't work, right? Like, you always want to be stretching yourself just above where you're currently capable. And that is an engine for flow. So if you're always looking for that stretch zone, it's an engine for more flow, more motivation, and you will feel, you'll feel stretched, like, but you're not trying to jump ahead and you're not going to snap. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. There's this real thing of getting too comfortable in something. And particularly getting to your cruising altitude and being like, okay, Lego Brawls is this game on Apple Arcade. My son and I play it all the time. And I realized, like, real quick, it was challenging. At first I was sucking, and then I started to get it, and then I got to mastering it. And I was like, okay, bring it on. And I was like, you know what I'm doing? I'm just like owning the game, but I'm not pushing myself past it. My son would come in and be like, let's play this level. And I was like, no, I only like to play those levels or those maps or whatever they're called. And I realized, I was like, okay, but I'm stagnate. And that's my thing too. You can quickly stagnate by not pushing yourself. So there's these 2 spectrums. You're talking about this one of like challenging yourself enough so you don't get crushed. And this other is don't get complacent either. Now, to each his own. That's the thing we always try to say. Everybody's business, I promise you, will look differently. But there's these 2 sides of like, it's an art, I think, is finding this blend of not too hard that it crushes you, but not so hard that you get complacent. and forget things or just overlook things or just phone it in. I've done both of these, by the way, but the middle is challenging enough. And that's where you get to set your own levels, you know, and why I've talked quite a bit publicly and privately. And, I've got a coach uh, that I meet with every Tuesdays at 9, and she helps me make progress. And because I got to this part that maybe I wasn't challenging myself enough, or maybe I got to, complacent, and keeps me finely tuned. So I'm doing my best at what I'm doing. Um, so, and the concept too about this whole concept of leveling, or the thought about this concept of leveling, is um, that you do want to probably, be able to win enough. Like the concept with my own children, when I'm trying to teach them stuff, I like to push, get right on the boundary of just, oh my God, that catastrophic failure, where they're like, but I like to push, and I realize I push too far. So I got to dial that back where they just get in the center of their flow and can feel striving and progress. And every couple of times they're tripping and falling, but they can get back up. If you're falling too many times, you probably need to adjust your levels a little bit. But I love this concept of the stretch zone.
Yeah, and it lines up with a lot of research from psychology about happiness as well. Like the more time you spend in that stretch zone, the happier and more fulfilled you're going to be, because we inherently as human beings, we like to grow, we like to master things, but we also get discouraged, and when we get crushed, it's crushing. So I love that part of your strategy, which I think is really awesome for staying in that stretch zone as often as you can, is the two outside sources of help that you always mention, which is counselor and coach, right? Like the counselor is kind of a protection against the downside of getting crushed, right? The counselor helps you process the the difficulties of life and business, and helps you stay more balanced and work with trauma and all that stuff, that good stuff about mental health. And then the coach is the person who helps you strive forward, right? Like helps you, so that's a really great strategy that you've shared, of making sure to keep yourself moving in a direction toward the goals that you've set for yourself in your life, but also make sure that you're not dealing damage to your confidence and your well-being, your mental health, by setting goals that are too hard and then being hard on yourself for not achieving them. It is tough. You mentioned this earlier. It's kind of an art to find the balance here. But as we talk about these stretch zones, I'm reminded of researching books on happiness that I've done, and a lot of studies about happiness. And that stretch zone is actually just it's a really good skill for life in general, is to, we feel like we are wilting when we're not growing, right? So we want to grow, we want to learn, we want challenges, but we don't want to get crushed by them. So just to reiterate all of that, it's really important. And the more time you spend in that stretch zone, not only will you enjoy the stuff you're doing, but you also have a happier life, which is really awesome.
Which lends perfectly to the aspect of a scoreboard, or having a dashboard that you look at and to be able to see how you're doing. And I would add, just on the heels of that, is it's not just dollars, or it's not just clicks. It's also like, hey, do I have enough fuel in the tank to continue doing this? Am I pushing myself way too far? We talk about self-care a lot. And so, if I spent too many nights up till 2 a.m., got up for my day job, and now I'm just like not good for my day job or my side gig, side hustle. And so, in the scoreboard concept, there's all kinds of things, but it's what is meaningful to you. So first we start thinking about the levels we need. Okay, this is the level I'm at currently, and I want to get to this level. And that's a lot about, balancing this, don't get crushed, but it's also progress, seeing how we can, roll our snowball and build and build and build the stages of what we're doing, keep us motivated, keep us hungry, keep us feeling also accomplished, knowing what we've done, previously, the concept of scoreboard can also be thought of as this dashboard. All the metrics you need to see, like if you get sick often because you're worn out, well, that's not a good dashboard metric. That one's telling you like this one, you're out of gas and it's causing everything else to go to failure. So, the concept of scoreboard is profound in a lot of senses. It's about motivation, but also health too. And how, there's health measurements about how the side gig's going. If I just scroll back to my freelance writing days, it's when I turn in a piece, are they raving about it, or are they meh? Are they like, hey, this is just not up to par? That's a metric on my dashboard or my scoreboard for me. So apply those things. What are the key things that really matter? And make sure you're somehow monitoring, watching the scoreboard. You can't have 50 things on your scoreboard either, by the way. You need to pick out the most essential parts of the scoreboard. That's at least how I do it. I actually went, I think I showed this to you, but I went and did a spreadsheet, and this is after one of my coaching sessions. Kelly was really helping me think through, my question was, am I doing the right things? Are those things working? And I had all these criteria I put out in the spreadsheet, which were like passion and interest. For me to help me keep engaged is, am I learning something? And I probably had 10 or 15 different criteria for all my projects. And I went through and I was like, that was a cool way to see outside of myself, not just my feelings, but also something that was more like numbers and degrees of, like, I had colors, red to green. And that was so helpful for me, but that was part of my scoreboard. In fact, now I'm being reminded I need to go do it again, refresh the scoreboard and see where I'm at, because it's kind of this concept. If you don't know or measuring what you're doing, how do you know you've made progress? How do you feel confident and secure about what you've done?
If you can measure it, you can manage it, right? That's a
Yeah.
really good point. And I think that's probably a good place to wrap up. I hope that this whole concept we've talked about today, of the metaphor of thinking of your side hustle, your business, and even your life as a game, how that can be beneficial to you and how that can lead you to success faster, and having fun and having an awesome life and an awesome business. So do you have any parting thoughts, Corey?
I think it's great. To each his own. Remember that, mileage may vary, but this is a concept both Brad and I have used successfully to help us stay engaged and know where we're going and measure it and keep highs and lows of business. It's a fact of being in this great, amazing job. I mean, it doesn't feel like a job, but it's a career choice for me. I want to be an entrepreneur always. So that's a wrap for Start the Snowball episode 5. Create your side gig as a bit like a game, so you can master it. And then be sure to subscribe at startthesnowball.com. Give us a review on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll be back soon with the next episodes, and hope to get some feedback from you too, and how you're liking what we're doing. And if you have questions, as always, we're open. Hit the contact form and we'll be sure to give you a reply, and also try to talk about it on the next episode. Brad, thanks, my friend.
Yeah, thank you, Corey. Great conversation as always.